Tom Vasel. Welcome to Week in Review. This is a video where I go back and take a look at reviews that I did this week, a year, 5 years, and 10 years ago, and I tell you what I think about them now, if I think about them at all. So last year, lots of stuff here. Sumatra, the game with an indiscernible font, and actually this is a problem with the game. The game is a typical collect tiles and get points in various ways. I thought the collecting tiles and points sounded more interesting than it actually was, and that the game itself, the font and everything, kind of worked against the game. It doesn't look that fantastic, so this is a 5 out of 10. Mystic Monkeys. This is a two-player back and forth. It felt like an abstract strategy game, but was a little too lucky for me. 5.5. Stardew Valley, coming out of nowhere. This game, based on a very popular video game. It's a 6. It's too long. There's not enough good options in the game. It's close. It could be better. Fame. This is from Friedman Freeze. It is everything in a box. There's a really cool concept in this game, in the idea of you're collecting cards and you're taking the lowest. They're sliding down here, and these cards let you put various pieces on the board, which looks like they poured out a bunch of pieces, and you're putting them out. The game has more of a random feel than I like it to be. I actually think the game is fun. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. It could be better, I think, if it was a little bit more focused. Umbra Via. This is an abstract strategy game from Pandasaurus that, frankly, if I'm explaining it to you, you'd be like, what is this? There's no theme. They try to put some kind of theme, and it could have looked better. But despite all that, some really interesting decisions, area control style, 7 out of 10. Carcassonne Hunters and Gatherers, they did a remake of this one. I wanted to play it with my kids to see what they thought of it, and I think this one has surprisingly held up well. My original rating of this game was not a 7. I think it was a 6. It's up to a 7 now. By the Vote. It sounds like a political game, and it is. But at a very macro level, you're not playing any political leaders. You're just trying to buy votes in states. It's an auction game, really quick auction game, some very simple mechanisms, and it works really well for as quick of a game as it is. 7 out of 10. Disney Haunted Mansion Call of the Spirits. There's a lot of these games that take Disney rides and turn them into games. Some of them, like Jungle Cruise, are terrible. This one, I thought, was pretty well done. The cards are a little bit small, but other than that, I enjoyed it. 7.5. Lift Off, Get Me Off This Planet. This is the deluxe version of this silly little game where you're trying to get these aliens to get to a planet and get off by any means necessary before it explodes. Little clunky in corners, but I still think it's a lot of fun. 7.5. Genotype, the newest science game. Man, Genius Games makes such great games. And this one here about finding and making beans and drafting dice. There's a few minor things, I think. Some of the action spaces get less interesting as the game goes by, which is something they do in a lot of their games. But still, excellent game other than that. 8 out of 10. Fantasy Realms came out with a reprint. Fantastic little card game. Much better than the Star Trek one that just came out recently. 8.5. Unforgiven, the Lincoln Assassination Trial. I really like this two-player game. There's a lot of similarities to Seven Wonders Duel, but the history aspect of this one really brought it home for me. 8.5. And then I took a look at the expansion for Fantasy Realms, which is called The Cursed Horde. It's not necessary, but it does add a lot of interesting ideas to Fantasy Realms. Another 8.5. 5 years ago, I took a look at Snatch. This is Spoons, Spoons with animals. It's terrible. 4 out of 10. Blend Off. This is a speed game in which you're making smoothies. I originally gave this a 7, but I think I'll drop it to a 6 because there's so many games that are like this at this point. Disney Some Bubble Fever. This is a game for kids. You're looking at the picture of it, you know whether you like it or not. 6 out of 10. Horde. Pushing your luck to get Dragon's Treasure. A little more complicated than it needed to be. Some good ideas, though. 6 out of 10. Coal Baron, the great card game. You know, I still haven't played Coal Baron, the board game, but the card game worked really well. Getting coal, getting it out. Really solid game mechanisms. 7 out of 10. Mighty Monsters. This is a reimplementation of an older, small Japanese game called Dungeon Guild, which I like. Essentially, you're trying to kill monsters together, but if someone doesn't pull their weight, every other monster after that automatically defeats the hero. It's an interesting idea. It's a little group dependent, but I like it, and that is a 7 out of 10. And then 1754 Conquest, the French and Indian War. This series, which also has 1812, 1775. Every game in this series is good, as is this one. This is maybe one of my least favorites of the series. Again, that's very minor. I like them all. but I give it a 7.5 anyway. A lot of fun, very light war game. 10 years ago, I took a look at Hexagon. Terrible game, 3 out of 10. This is from Catalyst Games. Battletech, this was their first foray, one of their first forays into the board game world. Happily, their games after this got a lot better. The Hunger Games, District 12. I initially gave this game a 6 from WizKids, but as time has gone by, I realized much of my liking of this was based on the fact that, hey, it's an IP game that's not terrible. No, but it's not fantastic either. Aura et Labora. Wow, 10 years now. This one I gave a 7.5 to, and I'm going to stick with that, even though I still would rather play Agricola, Caverna, Le Havre, Hallertau. I think I would want to play all those, and of course, Feast of Odin over this one. But that doesn't make this one bad. Odin's Ravens, a 2-player racing game. This one is very solid, has held up. There was some snafu with a Kickstarter several years ago where the person basically stole everyone's money, but it has since come out again. And if you want to play an interesting card manipulation game to race your Ravens down a path, this is a good one. And then Lords of Waterdeep, 10 years old now. Lords of Waterdeep, congratulations. The game that brought Dungeons and Dragons to the Euro game, or brought Euro games to the Dungeons and Dragons audience. This game about placing workers out, collecting resources or people, sending them on different quests, having your own buildings. A lot of games find their bases in this, and this is one of the games that brought worker placement to a wider audience. And I still really enjoy the game, 8.5 out of 10. So those are the games that I reviewed 1, 5, and 10 years ago. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and this has been Look Back on the Dice Tower. The bassoons with animals.